ahead and open the meeting up for June 25th, 2020, the Lake County Council of Mayors. Mike, can we do a somewhat of a roll call from your end, and so everybody's not speaking at once? How to kind of just go through and let people know who's on the call?
No problem. I was trying to catch everybody as they join. So I'll run through the list that I have here, and then we'll see if I missed anybody at the end. So, and a couple more people, but I've got Tim Dilsaver, Ed Wellness,
Yes, here.
Dave
Here.
Kilbane,
Here.
Kevin Carrier, Russell Petroviak,
Here.
Lee Fell, Michael Talbot,
Here.
Mayor Rockingham,
Here.
Ann Marin,
Here.
Mike Brown,
Present.
Bob Phillips,
Here.
Bob Ells,
Here.
Maria Lasday, I see Maria on there, Shane Schneider,
Here.
John Vanna,
Good morning here.
Denise Kofkis,
Here. Good morning.
good morning, Mark Kozlowski,
Good morning, I'm here.
Mayor Ryback,
I'm here.
Scott Drabicki,
Good morning.
Dan Shug,
Yep.
Joel Christel,
Here.
Gregory Elwinger, Dan Brinkman,
I'm here.
Fred Chung, and Bill Jacob.
Yes, I'm here.
Is there anyone else I missed? Looks like somebody just joined.
Lee Bell is here. You're not asleep anymore.
Wait.
You're not asleep anymore. Oh.
Well, I know.
I think that's I think we have everyone accounted for.
Okay.
We do have a quorum.
Very good. Okay, then let's go ahead and move forward. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? And I would ask if you do speak, can we have a name so we'll know who is making the motion and the second? So
Motion to approve the minutes, Mayor Rockingham. By Ryback.
Second.
Snyder will second.
okay, it's been a motion by Ryback, second by Talbot, that the minutes stand approved. Are any questions or changes in the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion, minutes approved. We're going on into number 3, Lake County Council STP program. And I'm going to turn this over to Mike to let him move forward on it.
Thank you, Mayor. Not a lot to update on our FY20 program. As we've discussed many times, the region did use up all of the programming authority available for fiscal year 2020. And at this point, it does not look likely that any additional funding is going to become available during the fiscal year. And that being said, even if additional funding did become available, the Council of Mayors Executive Committee put together a process for how the councils would be able to access those funds. And one of the prioritizations that was adopted was councils that have spent the least amount of money over the last 2.5 years would be first in line. And as we spent the most outside of the city of Chicago, we would not be first if additional funding did become available in 2020. So that kind of leads us into our item B, the recommended program. So we have our call for projects in the spring. We have scored and ranked all of the projects and put out a recommended program. And I'll switch over to that. And I do apologize. I know it's hard to see that this spreadsheet is not ideal.
Maria,
for
Mazday,
sharing.
join the meeting.
But the PDF is on our website and also was included in the meeting materials for today. So as everyone knows, we had a very large group of projects to grandfather in to our new program. We had a total of $39.7 million available over the 5-year period to be able to program new projects. And we had $36.7 million worth of grandfathered projects. So once we accommodated the grandfathered projects, we had a total of about $2.7 million available over the entire 5-year period to be able to program new projects. And that 2.7 was spread over several years. To give you an idea of what that looked like, once we slotted in the grandfathered projects in 2021, we had no funding available. In 2022, we had $309,000 available. In 2023, we had $471,000 available. There was no funding available in 2024. And in 2025, there was about 1.9 million. So that was kind of how the funding broke down. After we scored and ranked all the projects, and those are the other attachments that were included in the meeting minutes. There is a spreadsheet that shows how every project scored in every category. There's a list for the pavement preservation projects, the resurfacing type projects, and then also a list for all of the roadways and intersection projects. Those are the reconstructions and the intersection improvement projects. Once all those projects were scored, we combined both lists by rank into a single list, and then we use that list to then work on building our new program. We were able to fund the top 3 projects into our active program. That said, including the projects that are in the grandfathered list, very few projects are actually able to be programmed where their sponsors were hoping they would be. We had a large number of projects that were hoping to go this year that got delayed. As we started building the program, we started, as we've discussed in the past, the Nippersink project in Fox Lake and the Kruger Road project in Long Grove were the first 2 projects that were forced to be delayed. They were targeting the April letting of this year, and the region ran out of funding. So they were the first ones that we slotted in to our new program. We also had an engineering phase for Highland Park's Green Bay Road that was supposed to go this year. As you'll see, we now have it in our recommended program, that engineering phase in 2022. And that was at the request of the city of Highland Park to be able to advance part of their Clayview Road project in 2021, because they have additional funding outside of our council funding. They have SDP bridge funding to do a bridge replacement on that project that is programmed for next year. So they asked if they could delay their engineering phase to be able to advance the bridge work in 2021. So we were able to accommodate that change. But as we started building the program, what we found is, we had a number of projects: the Clayview Road project, stage 2 of Buffalo Grove's Brandywine and Thompson, Lake Forest project, and Vernon Hills, that were all basically targeting the same lettings. we obviously didn't have enough funding to be able to accommodate those. So the process we used was project readiness. And what we looked at is when they had started their phase 2, if there was right of way needed on those projects. And so we were able to fit in the Buffalo Grove Road, Brandywine and Thompson into 2021. And then because Highland Park was able to split the Clayview Road project into 2 stages to accommodate the bridge work in 21, the balance was in 2022. Once we got to the new projects, you know, the number 1 scoring project in the call for projects was from Zion, the 27th Street resurfacing project, and they were had requested $855,000 in 2022. But as I mentioned before, we only had $309,000 available in 2022. So in working with the city, they asked us to program it in 2025 where we could accommodate the full request. And so we worked through a similar process with Round Lake. You know, again, they were seeking funding in 2021. We were able to program it in 2025 and fund nearly all of what they were requesting. It's a little bit less than what they had requested, but we were able to fund the majority of it. And then the 3rd ranked project in Lincolnshire, we will have to split over 2 years right now to be able to accommodate that. So with that, this program is balanced. It does program out all the dollars that we are expected to receive over the next 5 years. And so I will stop here, see if there's any questions. Looks like you're on mute, Mayor Rocky.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Are there any questions? I know that we have been working on this for quite some time, and you know, the funding isn't, you know, I mean, we've been working with these STP fundings for over the last couple of years. And again, we've expended quite a few dollars here in Lake County. So
yeah, so if there aren't questions, what we're asking for today is approval to release this recommended program for a 30-day public comment period in July. And then we will come back at our meetings in August to respond to any public comment and then actually look to adopt this program.
Okay. Can I have a motion?
You have a motion by Mike Brown.
Ann Marin, second.
Okay. Motion by Brown, second by Marin.
I can put up a poll for this vote, Mayor, if that works for you.
Okay. Yes.
So we have a record of this one.
So, if you show in there, if you could please submit. And
looks like we've got everyone.
okay, I love that. Okay, motion carried. Very good. I gotta work on that one, Mike, for my city council.
That's why we do the advanced registration for these meetings. It allows us then, when we do this poll voting after the meeting, I can run a report and have in a spreadsheet how for each question how everyone voted.
Excellent. I'll pass that on to my city clerk. Okay, let's go on to C, project application ranking.
So I did show the application rankings, and C and D, the rankings and project scores. They were included in the meeting materials. I really only got one question on the applications score. And I think that was answered. So that's really the only feedback I've heard. Maybe everybody's saving it for the public comment period, and that's fine. But if it's all right, I'll move on to the next steps.
Yes, go right ahead.
So for next steps, we, as I showed, and I'll flip back to this recommended program, but basically everything below the green, everything in gray at the bottom is the applications that we received that we were not able to include in our active program. And so those projects would be eligible to be on the contingency list. According to the rules that CMAP put together, there are certain conditions that apply for being on the contingency list, and those include doing quarterly status updates, keeping your project moving. There's not a guarantee of federal funding for being on the contingency list, but our plan right now is that everyone we could not fund would sort of be eligible for that contingency list, and then we will send out basically a form that explains how the contingency list works, and ask the sponsors on the list to confirm that they do want to be on the contingency list. And so that'll go out in the next couple weeks here. And then also as part of our approved methodology, any project that's either in the active or the contingency list, the sponsor of the project, a staff member from that community would be required to attend a training on our active program management. We'll look to do that probably towards the end of July. Given where we're at, I'm sure that'll be, we'll do that virtually given the numbers of people. So we'll get that out. It shouldn't be too very long, but I do want everyone to, the purpose of it is for everyone to understand the process of how we'll pull projects off the contingency list into the active program, what happens if a project gets delayed, and just talk through our process. What if a project needs a cost increase? All those things are spelled out in our guidebook, but just talking through them so everyone's on the same page as we enter into this new program. That's the purpose of that. So really that's our next steps. That's all I have for that.
Okay.
Unless there are questions on the next steps.
Okay. And please, if you have a question in here, I think there is a spot you can raise your hand. And Mike will see that and he can get with you for that. So if there's no questions, Mike, you want to move on?
Sure.
Okay.
So the next item on the agenda is I guess I'll call it a potential long-term transportation bill. So this is the second act that Congress has taken to move towards a long-term transportation bill to replace the FAST Act, which expires at the end of this federal fiscal year at the end of September. Last summer, or end of summer last year, the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee passed a bill out of their committee, and we talked about it at that time. Now the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee has passed a new bill called the Invest in America Act. Included in the meeting packet today was a sort of a section by section summary. You can find lots of different summations online if you're looking for details, but I will talk about a little bit, hit the highlights of what it would mean should this become a new long-term transportation bill. I guess the thing to remember here is this is just one of the committees of jurisdiction in the House that would need to pass a long-term transportation bill. So the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee is responsible for USDOT, the Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration, Federal Railroad Administration, but Ways and Means would have to step in and find the funding to pay for these expenditures. And there are some other committees of jurisdiction that have other roles in the long-term transportation bill. So this is just one step, but Yes, encouragingly, it's happening before the FAST Act expires. That doesn't often happen. So to give you sort of the highlights, it's a 5-year bill. For fiscal year 2021, it basically keeps funding level as at FAST Act levels. And then for 22 through 25, funding does increase significantly over FAST Act levels. So it actually is about a 62% increase in funding over the levels of the FAST Act. It does it in a number of ways. It creates a new bridge program, a lot of new competitive programs that are through DOT rather than formula funding that goes to state DOTs. It would actually reduce the amount of formula funding that goes to state DOTs. But importantly for us in our discussion with our STP program, it would rename the STP block grant program, which was renamed from STP or Surface Transportation Program during the FAST Act. It would send it back to the STP program. But it would increase funding levels in 22 through 25 by about $2 billion a year. So that is a pretty sizable increase. Right now, nationwide, the SDP program gets about $11 billion a year. And so that would go up to just over $13 billion a year if that was passed. So that could mean that we see additional funding in the council program should something like this pass. Overall, it's $319 billion over the 5 years for the Federal Highway Administration, $105 billion for transit, and $60 million for the Federal Railroad Administration. As I mentioned, this is just one piece. So this was passed out of the House Transportation and Infrastructure. But importantly, it's taken the framework that they put out a couple months ago, the House Democrats, and it's turned it into legislative language. So that is a positive step forward. On the negative side, this wasn't passed with bipartisan support. This was passed by the House Democrats out of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. It probably doesn't need bipartisan support to get out of the T&I committee or the House, but it's going to need bipartisan support if we're going to have a long-term bill, in the Senate. So on the positive side, what passed out of the Senate last year, and this new Invest in America Act from this year, they are not significantly different in terms of the overall dollar amount in expenditures. They both increase in infrastructure expenditures quite a bit over the FAST Act. The Invest in America Act is about a 10% increase above what the Senate passed last year. But as I mentioned, it's 62% above the FAST Act. So it's a good thing that they're this close. It would create a new grant program to address at-grade rail crossings, which I know has been a big concern in our area and across the Chicago region. Really, it would be a $2.5 billion grant program to help with at-grade rail crossings. The CRISI program, which is a commuter rail program, would grow by over 300% in this program. It really prioritizes bridges and state of good repair overall. So we're starting to see now, even though this was passed just by the House Democrats, it wasn't a bipartisan bill. We are starting to see sort of policy direction that's coming towards a long-term bill, and that is key. So moving forward, like I said, there are at least 2 other committees in the House and I believe 3 committees in the Senate that would still need to take action to pass a long-term transportation bill. The likelihood of that happening before the election in November is very small. But this is an important step. And importantly, the way this bill was crafted, it could be adopted as basically a continuing resolution. It would extend FAST Act expenditures into next year, and then start a new bill from 22 through 25. So that's kind of a brief summary. the overall bill is about 860 pages. It is online. If you have trouble sleeping this weekend, you can take a look through.
Or the next month.
That's right. So with that, I'll stop here and see if there are any questions that I could try to answer.
Does anyone have any questions? It'd be nice if we would get this through and be able to get some of that funding, though. It's really needed, so.
Absolutely.
I have a question. It's Bill Jacob, Long Grove president. What can we do to help support getting this legislation through?
Think, talking to our local Congress people, and then any support that we can throw behind, members of Congress that are on the committees that have responsibility for the long-term bill. So that's, the House Transportation and Infrastructure has passed it, but Ways and Means needs to come up with a way to pay for these, providing support for those. There's some difficult decisions that need to be made to keep the Highway Trust Fund solvent. And so anything we can do as local communities to support that and support those actions is what it will take.
Well, if there's a way to coalesce amongst all of us, I don't know how we do that, but perhaps we should.
Would there be anything or anything that we could do, maybe from a letter from the Lake County Council of Mayors in support of this that would help it?
We did send a letter earlier, a couple months ago,
Yeah.
when the stay-at-home order and the COVID pandemic really took off, on behalf of the council, urging Congress to pass a new long-term transportation bill and also provide as much flexibility as possible to help offset the losses in transportation revenue that agencies are going to be seeing over the next couple of years. We could look at drafting something new that builds on that letter. Be happy to work on that if the group would like to do that.
I think that might be appropriate, just to focus, more onto this. Yeah. So does that need a motion to do that, or you just want to go ahead and prepare it and we can put it on the next meeting?
Yeah, I can work on some draft language and we can make sure we include it on the next agenda for sure.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Number 5, the pandemic recovery guide. Nate?
Yeah. So I put this on here for a couple things. To inform people that this guidebook is out there. This NACTO is the National Association of City Transportation Officials, and they have put together a pandemic guide called Streets for Response and Recovery, and it provides some guidance on things like closing traffic lanes to allow for restaurants to have outdoor seating, or providing enough room for social distancing outside of stores. And we've seen, there's been news reports about Chicago a lot, having shared streets and closing some streets to traffic. And I know where I live in Grays Lake, I've seen that they have closed off a couple of parking lots and parking spaces to allow restaurants to have outdoor seating. I know this Zoom format doesn't necessarily lend itself to a great discussion, but the thought here was to see, really to try to have a brief discussion at least of, are any of our communities doing this? CMAP is trying to understand how communities are using their roads, or if they are, to respond to the pandemic and the recovery. And if there's a way that they can provide some technical assistance to people. The link to the guidebook was in the agenda, and I just kind of wanted to see, if anybody had anything to add, if their community is doing something, even temporary.
Okay, and I was gonna ask that same question. Is any other communities trying to close any streets to, allow for their restaurants to open outside?
In Long Grove, we have plenty of space. We don't need to do that. So, and we have one street closed because we have a bridge out. So,
Okay.
so that can be used if needed.
Yeah, I know that here in North Chicago, there's a couple of our, I guess actually bars and restaurants that they're using their parking lots more than the street. So they're closing off part of their parking lot to accommodate, seating out there. So, and yeah, so, okay. All right. If there's no other questions, going to 6, other business.
Yeah, just a couple of things that I'll run through briefly here. So there, next Wednesday, there's a webinar from 11:30 to 1 on ITEP funding, and that's the Transportation Enhancements Program. If you remember last year when the Capitol Bill passed, as part of the Capitol Bill, legislation was included that $50 million a year would be put into the ITEP program. That's for bike and pedestrian projects, enhancement projects. So this call for projects that's going to happen this fall should be about $80 million available for bike and pedestrian projects, which is more than that program has ever had. This is a collaboration between the Illinois Public Health Institute and the Active Transportation Alliance. And I will send a link in the chat, the meeting chat, to that registration if anyone is interested. The other item on this slide is CMAP's Future Leaders in Planning program. This is for high schoolers who may be interested in learning about the planning profession. This year it's going to be a virtual summer series. It'll be once a week through July, I believe, and maybe part of August. A couple other items that I wanted to mention. This afternoon, the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity and the Economic Development Administration is having a webinar at 2 o'clock for the CARES Act. How to apply for funding and make projects eligible for CARES Act funding through the EDA and DCEO. So I just put the registration for that. That's the second link that was in the chat. So if you're interested in that, that is this afternoon at 2 o'clock. And then two ongoing studies in our area. Lake County DOT is doing a study on a project on new wayfinding signage for bike paths. And so there's a test section up along the North Shore Trail, just south of 176 in the Libertyville, Mundelein area. It runs from Butterfield Road to St. Mary's, and on those signs there's a QR code. If you're out there riding your bike, you could scan the QR code with your phone and take a survey about the look of the signs and the wayfinding. And, so they're looking for feedback. That'll be up all summer. And then the Northern Lakeshore Connectivity Plan, the communities, Beach Park, Zion, Waukegan, I think there's a couple others, have a plan that's being funded through CMAP, and they're having a virtual open house Tuesday, July 7th. And their website is on there, connecttonorthernlakeshore.com, and they're looking for feedback on their draft plan. I think that is all I had for other business. if there's anybody else that has anything.
Are there any other comments? Okay. Public comments. Anything, Mike, for public comments?
I have nothing in the email, and I don't have anything in the chat as well.
All right, very good, thank you. All right, and then as you see it there, our next meeting will be August 27th, 2020. I guess plan accordingly, put it on your calendars so we can all meet again in Zoom. So I guess with that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Ryback.
Second.
That is moved by Ryback, second by, who was that?
Me, Thomas Maylard.
Oh, Thomas, okay, very good. Are there any questions on the adjournment? No questions, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, everybody
Aye.
stay safe.
You too, thanks.
Yes,
you.
yes.
Thanks,
We'll
Mr.
meet
Chairman.
again in Zoom.
Stay well.